you know, we still need the stories, whether we read modern novels or not. It's like, we need that connection, whether it's with our elders or with our kids. We pass these stories on as something precious. For me personally, it's probably just the unknown. I've always been drawn more to the unknown and whatever the beyond of normal life. So I would actually go out and look for these. We would go to haunted houses. We would go to haunted areas of the cities, see what was going on. Yeah. Now, whatever that comes from, I don't know, but it kept life interesting.
It was almost like an escape.
Definitely an escape. Family life was not a happy life, so that was an escape. Oh, definitely.
Hey, welcome to the Floaties for Krakens Podcast. I am your host, Camille Maria Costa, and it is a brilliant day to be monstrous. Well, hello there, my beautiful, creepy little cuttlefish. Welcome back to Season 3, Episode 19 of the Floaties for Krakens Podcast. A podcast all about the monsters in our head, but reclaiming them instead. Long time no see. How are you guys? How's everything? I know. Life is definitely lifing right now. I could not agree more. I'm so sorry I had to escape for a little while, but I am very, very happy to be back in the podcast hot seat, talking nothing but monsters with brilliant, brilliant humans. Speaking of these brilliant, brilliant humans, the guest we have on our show today is just truly so freaking talented. Not only is she so experienced and so knowledgeable in the world of monster exploration, but she is quite literally the kindest soul imaginable. It is my ultimate pleasure to introduce to you all Ree. Ree is a passionate artist, TTRPG streamer, and horror enthusiast. She's almost always involved in more than one creative project. Of course she is. When she's not diving headfirst into a new obsession or crafting epic stories with loved ones, she makes time to bake wonderful vegan treats for her friends and family. You can catch her in mortal roles on Monday nights, It's Freaking Amazing, where she plays the fated angel turned mortal, Eve. Or on Wednesday nights in House of Tremere, where she plays the eerie and enchanting vampire, Miruna. You can also commission her for character art should her portfolio catch your eye. Ree is such a lovely human being. Her passion for telling stories in such creative and eye-opening ways is revolutionary to witness. She cares so much about lost souls and helping them find their way through art, magic, and escapism. Ree, you are a force to be reckoned with, truly. And the creative monster world is beyond lucky to have such a fierce, fierce artist on their side. Please come back anytime. We'd be incredibly honored to have you back. Just a quick content warning for this episode. In the following interview, there will be mentions and discussions of gore, death, child death, murder, body mutilation, abuse, sexual abuse, stalking, mental health, depression, and the taking of one's own life in this episode. Do whatever you need to do to feel safe. Alrighty, ladies and cuttlefish, let me introduce to you, piecing yourself back together for Tomies. Well, hi, Ree.
Hi, Camille.
How are ya?
I'm pretty good. I'm excited. How are you?
Me too. I've been looking forward to this all week. I
Yay!
am so pumped. Like, I think I don't want to give anything away just yet, but the levels of darkness I think that we are about to explore in this episode is going to be so fun and so delightful. And I know that sounds strange, but it is.
No, not to me. It does not sound strange at all.
Oh, it's perfect. I'm pumped. I'm gonna learn so much from you today, and
Oh,
I'm ready. I'm ready.
okay,
Well,
excellent.
Ree, how about you tell everybody a little bit about yourself? Who are you, and what do
Sure.
you do?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Ree. I am. I absolutely love all things horror,
Yeah.
all things dark and creepy and intense. Um, I aside from watching horror movies and reading horror manga like we're going to talk about today, I am very into the world of tabletop gaming.
Yes.
I am in a couple of live streamed TTRPGs. One of them is called Mortal Rolls. It's a Pathfinder 2E homebrewed game where we play as fallen gods and, in my case, fallen angel.
Oh,
It's
love it.
very inspired by Roman history and the Greek and Roman pantheon and mythology. But we make it our own. It's so much fun. And the other game that I play on, it's called House of Tremere. It's a Vampire the Masquerade game, which is also super fun. Both of them. I mean, my thing with my characters is usually creating very dark backstories and
Yeah.
then delving into those. So it goes hand in hand, honestly, with
Love
everything
it.
we're going to talk about today.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so much to ask you.
Yeah.
Before we get into the world of TTRPGs, can you tell me how did horror find you? Like how young were you? Like how did you
Yeah.
start exploring that world? What made you fall in love with it?
It's interesting actually because when I was really young, I was terrified of anything horror. I did not.
Really?
Yeah. Um I was the kid who would leave a birthday party and go home if there was a horror movie, like a silly horror movie that people wanted
Yeah.
to watch. So it's so interesting. And then I was still relatively young when I got into horror, and it was almost like a flip switch, like a complete 180.
Yeah.
I was in junior high, so I don't know, maybe like 13 or 14 when
Yeah.
um I was very into Vocaloid.
Can you explain?
Yes. So for those of you who don't know, Vocaloid it's essentially a program that you can use to create uh, music. So it's almost like an electronic singer. Musicians can use it along with their music, but at the same time, it's taken on a life of its own because part of why it became so popular is that the Vocaloid voice boxes, each one has this character that goes to kind of portray the voice box, who the character is that's singing, and because of uh, the most popular voice boxes are in Japanese. There's these sort of anime style characters, and people love them, and they kind of take on a life of their own. And it's a
Yeah.
fascinating phenomenon because um, the world of like Vocaloid MVs, music videos, people create these songs, and you almost have these group of Vocaloid characters. You can almost think of them like a rotating cast. So, like each one, they have their own personality, but
Yeah.
they're cast in these different stories when people create these different worlds within each song. So there's a series. There's a very popular one called Alice Human Sacrifice.
Ooh.
And
Great
it's sort of like
title.
a creepy Alice in Wonderland type of thing. It's about like each of the characters getting lost in Wonderland and being driven insane, doing these various dark things.
Yeah.
Each character gets twisted in their own way. And that was the first thing that I found. And I just loved this song. I would just listen to it over and over, and I would watch the video, and it was creepy, and I don't know, and I liked it. It was the first thing like that I liked. And that led me to somehow, I don't remember exactly how, that led me to the anime Higurashi no Naku Koro ni,
Oh my gosh. Yes.
which is probably still my favorite anime of all time.
Yeah.
Very dark, heavy horror. I watched that and I was just hooked.
Yeah.
And I don't know, something about it just spoke to me. I think that was the time in my life when like a lot of, I don't know, like young teenagers just start to feel a lot of feelings.
Yeah. To put it
um,
lightly.
yeah. So I don't know, something about it connected with me on a very deep level, and that was kind of how I found my way in to the world of horror. And from there, I found Junji Ito, and became very obsessed with all of his work, and then kind of expanded out later into the more like, now I watch horror movies and things like that. But that kind of came after.
Yeah. Oh my god, what a fun journey. I have never heard of Vocaloid before. So
Oh,
that's
cool.
so cool. And like I can picture it in my mind, it sounds so badass. Like it, especially as a middle schooler, like just
Oh yeah,
discovering that like for the first
yeah.
time must have been so incredible and just so creative. What a cool concept. Like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, I love that. That is so brilliant. And I love, like, I know how you said that, that specific one that you were really into is very Alice in Wonderland esque,
Mhm.
right? So there was definitely that feeling of escapism almost, this
Yes.
other world, would you say?
Yes, always. That was
Yeah.
most of the things that I was very drawn to. Definitely
Mm,
had a strong element of that.
definitely. And like you said, very layered, very dark. Like it could get
Mhm.
pretty cryptic pretty quickly. Yeah. Oh, that's so cool, Ree. Okay, great. So in terms of storytelling, right? It seems
Mhm.
like you really love exploring stories that have, full-fledged characters, right? And layered characters and just really long storylines that could be really fun and expressive, dark, all the emotions. And for people that may not know, right? What is like a TTRPG, right? I know you explained some
Yeah.
of the amazing things that you do. So what for somebody that's never heard of a role-playing game in that format, what is
Yes,
it?
absolutely. So TTRPG, it stands for tabletop role playing game. And the best way that I could describe it, it's kind of like it's the experience of playing is in between playing a video game and sitting down and writing a story with your friends, and also kind of being in a play.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's, yeah, you have one person, the game master or the dungeon master. There are different names depending on the system that you're playing in, but generally a game master who acts as almost the narrator. They tell they kind of weave the world that you're in, and then each player is responsible for coming up with their own character that they play as. And usually there's prep work before you actually start playing. Players will work with the GM to weave their backstories into the world that the GM has created, and then once you start off, you're basically playing along this adventure where you're narrating what your character does, and the GM will narrate how the environment around you responds to it. Your characters interact with each other and with the world, and yeah, it's just a beautiful way of kind of telling a story together.
Definitely. It's such a beautiful like medium for like community too,
Yeah.
and like building friendship and just having like such a genuinely good time. I think being silly or being like dramatic or being intense and like I feel like it brings out a lot of childlike whimsy like for people.
Mhm.
I just love it. I've been a part of one in my life and it changed my whole life. Like it was so much
Oh,
fun.
absolutely.
Oh,
It's it's completely changed my life too. I mean, I was a kid that always wanted to play make believe.
Yeah.
Like probably like when I got older, to the point where most kids did not do that kind of thing anymore and thought it was childish. So I
Yeah.
mean, finding tabletop gaming was just like, oh, this is just what I wanted to do the whole time.
Yes. It exactly. It heals that part of you, I think.
Hmm.
Because and I'm right there with you. Like I get really annoyed when people think first of all that like childish or whatever is a derogatory term. I think that's so stupid because
Agreed.
I think we learn so many beautiful things from children in general and like
Hmm.
being able to be vulnerable in those spaces and make believe and just let go and be free in that way.
Yeah.
And I totally agree with you. I think TTRPGs are a beautiful way um to kind of hold your childhood's hand, right? And be like, just go
Hmm.
for it. Like just tell the stories, be a part of it, like be anything that you want to be.
Yeah,
It's so much fun.
I agree.
That's so cool. So how did you get into that realm in terms of like live streaming, right? And like kind of mixing media in that way with
Yeah.
TTRPGs?
Yeah. So I guess as far as live streaming goes, I had been playing TTRPGs for several years by that time. I think um, I and I had kind of started off uh, a new game, and I was just, I was playing with some friends, and we had this cool concept, and we were like, why don't, it'd be really cool if we tried streaming this, if we tried making something out of it.
Yeah.
And so we did it, and it was a lot of fun. And now, like, that particular group didn't quite work out, but I met some very amazing people along that journey, and
Yes.
we kind of created something new after that. And that really was um where, I don't know, I found my, I don't know, my second family. The cast of Mortal Roles, they are absolutely my second family.
Yeah.
We are all so close, and both like through the work that we do to, I don't know, we treat the stream like a business. It is a business.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Um, but it's also it's a labor of love. Like, we are all so passionate about it, and all of us grow closer through the emotions that we all
Yeah.
end up feeling from the story that we're telling together. And it's really wonderful. So and I'm an artist as well, so I really specialize in drawing characters. So
Yes.
I create the character art for the stream, both of the streams that I'm in, and that's just something that I really love doing as well.
My God, I didn't know you were behind the illustration. I've seen some of
Oh,
them
really?
on, yeah, on social media. Because I was gonna say, first of all, the Mortal Roll, it's like so colorful and like so. I don't know, like it's so cool what you all have created, and I didn't know that you were an artist. That's awesome.
Oh my
Oh my
gosh, thank
gosh,
you.
how did you get into your love of artistry and drawing and in that way?
Yeah. So I think I've been, I don't know, I've always been into art since I was pretty young. It was a
Yeah.
thing that I did on and off. I liked drew anime characters in the margins of my notebooks during
Yes.
class, like so
Yes.
many of us did.
Same.
Um,
Yep. Lots of eyes, just anime eyes over
lots
and
of
over.
eyes, yes, exactly. Um, and it was honestly, it was partially was the characters that I started to create when I got into playing tabletop games that got me back into drawing. I had a character that I had created, and she was kind of my foray into TTRPGs. My first like character that I played in a long-term campaign, Nasari. And
Yeah.
I had this really elaborate backstory for her. I probably have like 30 written pages of like backstory
That's amazing.
cumulatively. And I started drawing her, and that was me picking up drawing for the first time in a while. And I don't know, I really wanted to be able to capture her, and then I wanted to be able to capture all the other characters in the game, all the NPCs. That was my first experiment drawing TTRPG characters, and I literally drew every single NPC in the game. I printed them out. I gave it to my wonderful DM,
Yeah.
which was great for her ADHD to be able to have all the characters printed out.
Amazing. Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, it was I got into it that way, and then I kind of just never stopped. It became a hyper focus of mine, and
Yeah.
um I wasn't very good at first, but I kept practicing,
I
and I got
doubt it.
better.
I bet you were stellar. I bet you were.
Oh, thanks. I
Awesome.
it's a regardless, it's exciting to look back and see progress. Like
Yeah.
the art that I mean, part of growing as an artist is looking back at something you did like a few months ago and cringing because but that's a good thing because it means your eye is getting better. It means that you can do it better now. So
Yeah.
there's like they kind of talk about there's these two elements of art. There's your eye for detail, your eye for like what looks right and knowing how something's supposed to look, and then there's your physical skill to actually draw it. And
Mm,
they advance at different speeds. So
mm,
sometimes when you feel really good about your art, that's usually when you've increased your like physical drawing skills
yeah.
more than your eye. And then when it's the other way around, that's when you start to feel like, oh no, that was bad.
Yeah.
I can do it
Yeah.
so much better now. So it's kind of this constant cycle, and I feel like most artists experience that. Like you have periods where you look at your art and you feel really satisfied, and then you have periods where you look at it and you're like, nope, it's all wrong. It's all wrong. Got to
What did
do it
I
over.
just do?
Why
Yeah. Yeah.
did I think that was good a
Yeah.
month ago?
Yeah.
What was wrong with me?
But you're
So
right.
yeah,
Yeah.
but it's, I think once you kind of realize that that's what's going on, it's, at least for me, it's easier to be motivated by those more difficult periods because it's like, okay, no, this just means that I need my hands to catch up to my eye.
Yeah. That's such a beautiful way of putting it though. I feel like it gives yourself a lot of grace for growing and being where you were, right? Like you wouldn't be where you
Yeah.
are now if you didn't just go for that weird thing you thought you
Yeah.
did, right? Like 3 months ago. And I've never heard of it that way in terms of like your eye catching up with your skill.
Yeah.
It makes perfect sense,
Uh,
and that's also kind of cool when you're like, oh, okay, I could draw better because I have better ideas and just a better, I don't know, vision for what I can
mhm,
accomplish. My standards have
mhm.
grown now,
Yeah.
which is exciting to challenge yourself in that
Yeah.
way.
Absolutely. And I think, yeah, I wish more people would like be able to internalize that because I mean, I know so many people who either say, "Oh, I wish I could draw, but I can never draw," or people
Mhm.
who I know who are fantastic artists, but still don't think that their art is good.
Yeah,
And we're our own worst critics, but I think,
sure.
uh, it's something you hear a lot is like every artist has made bad art, like a million pieces of bad art before they made the good art. So it's truly like
100%.
you just yeah, if you can, it's hard to stay motivated sometimes, but like if you can, and I know for me, having that goal, having these like images in my head and these like very lively characters that I want to be able to visualize is my motivation. And that's usually what keeps me going over the humps of demotivation that come.
Yeah. Your inner
Yeah.
critic. It's
Yes.
it's it's very easily overridden with just pure inspiration and
Mhm.
drive,
Yeah.
like, and I love that. I think, that's why all of these artists, right, that you described that are still so frustrated, why they keep doing it. Because it's like, no,
Yeah.
I have to. I have to. Like, this is my life. I live and breathe, right? This
Yeah.
artistry, I have to keep going and prove that inner critic wrong. Um,
Mhm.
but like you said, it could be so hard. It could be
Yeah.
so freaking hard to do and remind yourself on a daily
Yeah.
basis. Yeah, yeah. Well, speaking of drawing characters, Ree, I have a potentially hard question for you.
Okay.
Um, in your opinion, what do you think is a monster?
Hmm. It's a very good question. So I think that I guess I feel like I have to give two sort of definitions because there's a monster. in terms of what I believe is typically labeled as a monster.
Mm-hmm.
And that's usually something that's different and not well understood. And that scares people for one reason or another, because people are scared of the unknown. So that's, I think, anything that falls into that category is often branded a monster.
Mm-hmm.
What I think of when I think of what's a real monster, I think that is about, it comes down to your actions and capacity for, or lack of empathy. I think when I think of truly monstrous things in this world, I think of mostly people. The human capacity for cruelty goes far beyond almost anything else.
Yeah.
So I think, yeah, that's like a little bit cliche to be like, people are the real monsters, but I mean,
No,
that's what I think.
no, it's not. You'd be surprised, right? Like there's, a lot of people don't have the guts, number one, to say that, um, or maybe just haven't. If I give them the benefit of doubt, maybe just haven't realized it, or too scared to realize it themselves.
Yeah.
Um, because you're absolutely right. I think I love the words that you used in the lack of empathy, right? Like not being able to put yourself in other people's shoes who are potentially different, right? Like as you mentioned, like otherized in that way.
Yeah.
And I love how you said too, like these two definitions, these two perspectives of what society might think, right, a monster is. And then from your own experiences, what you've actually seen and what you've lived, like
Yeah.
it's been defined for you in that way. And I love that. I also love that you are also inherently saying, right, people don't often view humans or humanity, right, as monsters, when oftentimes, right, their actions are how we create these characters in the first place. You know
Yep.
what I mean?
Yep.
Yeah, yeah. And there's so much I love how you said too, just like what's the word I'm looking for? Like subjectivity and
Yes.
privilege almost to who gets to
Mm,
call who a monster,
it's true.
right?
Yeah.
Definitely,
Absolutely.
definitely. Yeah. Oh, this is gonna be fun. Okay. So one of potentially, right, like one of the greatest monster creators, I would argue, is the lovely, incredible Junji. So please, can you tell us who Junji Ito is? Who is he? What does he do? What does he create in the
Yeah.
world of horror?
So okay. So Junji Ito is a very, in my humble opinion, but certainly not only my opinion, incredibly
No.
talented artist, illustrator, mangaka, creator of a huge breadth of work in terms of horror manga. And he, there's something I think incredibly visceral for many people about his art and what he
Good
captures
word.
in
Yeah,
it. um,
definitely.
it's just, he uses a lot of body horror. Um, is big. Um, there's some really strong. I think people focus a lot on the body horror of his work, which makes sense because it is visually like stunning and terrifying and evokes everything that it's supposed to evoke. But I think there are a lot of elements of psychological horror in his work that are sometimes like overshadowed by what people see at that first glance. And I think like there's a large part of that grips me about his work and always has. One of my favorite stories, and it's popular, The Enigma of Amigara Fault.
Yes, tell us about
Um,
it.
yes. So if you've ever seen the pictures where there's someone and they're like, this hole, it was made for me, and it's like a person looking at a hole that's shaped like a person in a mountain. And so that's, I mean, what the story was about is these people seeing this fault, Amigara fault, on television, and they would see there were all these person-shaped holes, and they would see one and they would know it was their shape, and they would feel like drawn to it, like that is my shape, it's meant for me, I have to go and see it. And then when they were there, they would feel they had to go and be in it. And what happens to people as they go in is this horrible, like the whole, if I'm a little claustrophobic, if you're claustrophobic, this is definitely a nightmare.
100%.
You go in, it just gets smaller and smaller, and the people go through it, and they're essentially like squished and mutilated into this almost unrecognizable noodle-like form, and they come out the other end, these like just shells of people. Like somehow there's some magic within this mountain that the people manage to stay alive despite all their bones breaking, despite their flesh mutating. Like it's horrifying, and the end result is horrifying. But I think that was never the thing that scared me the most about it.
Yeah.
What really drew me in, and the thing, and that story kept me awake at night, was there's a really poignant scene where there are two people, they meet at this vault when they're going to see it together, and there's a guy and a girl, and the girl is like saying that she's seeing this hole and she's terrified, and she's telling the guy like, I'm so terrified that I'm going to go into it, and like I don't want to, but I am pulled to. And they kind of almost, they fall in love, and the guy wakes up and she's gone, and she's gone into her hole. And it's that, like that inevitable pull towards fate. It's like that, that the feeling of when you looking over the edge, and the fear of like I could just jump.
Yeah.
And the feeling of loss of agency and being subject to an unavoidable fate, and like knowing that this is your fate but still being unable to keep yourself from it. That concept, I think, strikes me deeply. So that's just a in my opinion, a poignant example from his work.
I mean, right, like how do you even think of something as incredible, right, as that? Like it's such a unique, freaking layered, beautiful, dark premise of a story that starts with a hole, right? In a hole in the right. It sounds funny, I know, but like like what is that, right?
Yeah.
And like you said, such brilliant artistry and writing and story creation makes you realize this is a story about humanity. Like this is a story about people and their trials and tribulations. And you put it so perfectly, right? This idea of inevitable fate. And it makes you think so much of like mental health, like you mentioned, for example, how your DNA is this way. You are going to inevitably be this way, and no matter how much you don't want to, right, or have these thought patterns or whatever, like
Yep.
it's inevitable. And that's just one aspect. And I mean, it's so, god, it's breathtaking. And every single one of his freaking stories like are
Yeah.
stunning.
Yeah.
Stunning. Oh god. And I also really appreciate that you said, obviously his ink drawings, his illustrations are wild. They are so captivating, terrifying for so many. They aren't like anything you've ever seen before, and I think he really taps into, like you said, claustrophobia earlier,
Yep.
people's fears. And what they fear the absolute most, that you're like, that could never happen, and he's like, oh, but what if it
did? Yeah.
And that's scary enough as it
Yeah.
is. But I really appreciate that you mentioned that might turn people off at first glance, like, oh, I don't think I want this or whatever. but you fail to realize how brilliant his story making is and how brilliant his characters are, and how it's really, again, truly a story about people, like human beings, and how
Mhm.
freaking hard it is to be one, um on this planet, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's get into the guest star of the hour. Please, can you tell us all about Tomie?
Yes, I can. I cosplayed for the occasion.
Yes, you did. With the, I knew it. Okay, so I wasn't sure, and I was like, "Did you have the dot under your eye as
I know
well?"
I drew it.
Oh, well, see, period, period, Tomie. Oh, I love it. Okay, go for it. Go for it. Tell
I
us.
had to.
Of course.
I but yeah, as also as a cosplayer, I had to. Um,
Yes. Yes.
so Tomie, so I think it's definitely it's one of Junji Ito's most famous works. I think a lot of people at this point have seen images from it, even if they don't actually know
Mhm.
what it is or like what the story's about. Um, so the gist of it, Tomie is a woman, sort of.
Hmm.
Um, she's not a human.
Yeah.
She's this incredibly beautiful woman, and men mostly, but like people become captivated by her. Young men in particular, they fall for her. They become obsessed with her, and then they have this indescribable urge to kill her and cut her body into pieces. And like a hydra, each one of those pieces regrows into a new Tomie.
Yep.
Um, and so it's that's the basic concept, but I think that there's so much to unpack about her and her story and the character. Um, and one of the other really cool things is you can see Junji Ito also like grow as an artist over the course of
Oh,
writing them over the
yeah.
years, because the the art it just improves and improves, and
Yeah.
his style just is honed further as he writes the different iterations of Tomie
Yeah.
stories. And I think, and Tomie is, I mean, in a lot of ways, she is a monster. She is, but I would argue the fact that she regrows from a million pieces isn't really what makes her a monster. I think she is a terrible person. There's
Yeah.
no, she's she is a brat at best. A like incredibly like manipulative, emotionally abusive person. I mean, and I at worst, you know, behind many murders and whatnot, she sends assassins after other people that she doesn't like. She sends
Yeah.
them after people for revenge. She sends them after the other versions of her because she can't stand to have, she wants to be the only one.
Right.
She is
Right.
so vain that she wants to be the only one. And yet, I don't think she's the biggest monster in her story.
Hmm.
um,
Ooh. Ooh. Ooh.
because if you read over the course of the different iterations, her character does evolve and she gets worse. The very
Mm.
first edition of Tomie, she
Yeah.
is she is a teenage girl. She is a little bit obnoxious,
Sure.
but she's more or less a teenage girl. And the story is it's told from the perspective of her one friend, Reiko, her other female friend.
Yeah.
And the other girls don't like Tomie. They think she's stuck up. Reiko is her only friend, and she starts off the iteration by telling everyone that, oh, my friend Tomie died, and
Mm.
goes into this story about how they went on a class field trip, um, and she died some in this mysterious way. But then the next day, everyone's mourning her. Guess who shows up at class? It's Tomie. And she's there. And she looks just the same. And she's like, hey guys, you miss me? And they're like, what? We all saw you die. And it's extra horrifying for everyone because as it turns out, what you learn is that her murder was a murder. It wasn't an accident. She fell at first from a cliff.
Yeah.
Everyone thought she was dead. And the teacher of the class who brought them on this trip has the idea that, well, we're all involved in this now and no one should throw their lives away. So let's cut her into all these pieces and hide her. As they start to cut into her, they see she's alive and he keeps doing it. He just says, well, it's too late now. And there is basically stated there has been a relationship between Tomie and her teacher. So you have this older man who, is responsible for this. And no matter how you want to look at it, like I think Tomie in her very first iteration is largely fairly innocent.
Yes.
She's a young girl who her older teacher was having an inappropriate relationship with her and then essentially murdered her and then brought the rest of her class in it. He tells each person to take a piece of her and take it home and hide it and do something with it, get rid of it. I think it's 42 of them and there's 42 pieces of her body that were chopped up. Her friend, they give Reiko her heart because she was her only friend.
Oh my God.
So that is the first story.
Oh my God.
So it's dark, and in that story, there are lots of ways to interpret it.
Yeah.
Because Tomie, in the subsequent iterations, becomes more and more evil. And you could say, okay, there's a couple ways to interpret that. One, maybe we're just seeing more and more of her character because in the first, she's killed fairly early in the first one. We barely even get to see who she is. In the second one, we see more and more. My interpretation, personally, it's very mysterious where she comes from. And I have to wonder if she wasn't always so terrible. Like, if she was just a relatively normal girl and this horrible thing happened to her, and every time she multiplies, it's like pieces of her are chopped up and they grow and they maintain all of these horrible traumatic memories because like they do, like the pieces, they remember people that they haven't interacted with. They seem to have the memories of the other Tomies somehow. They seem to be connected.
Okay.
So I wonder if she has just become more and more monstrous over time, until she is just as horrible as the people who have harmed her, which is a tale as old as time.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
It's interesting because that is despite how horrible she is, even in the later ones, and again, not gonna underplay it, she's horrible in the later generations. There's one where she basically she drives a little boy insane by telling him she's his mother, and he is like ready to, he basically, people become like addicted to her and this whole so. But the men who become obsessed with her, there are so many of them who are these horrible people, and you can have the excuse that has this enchantment on her and that she makes people do these things, but like, where have we heard that before?
Exactly.
So And it's clear too, because there are like one or two people who I would say are like who do manage to resist it and who run away from her and who are end up being more of victims. But the majority of the people, so like I mean that shows that it's possible. The majority of the people, they fall for this. They become obsessed with her, like this cult, and then eventually they grow so jealous that they need her all to themselves and they murder her brutally and dismember her.
Every time.
And so I think there are so many monsters in these stories, and Tomie is not the greatest of them.
Yeah. Ooh. Well, brilliantly explained, first of all. It sounds like such an incredible story. What an incredible premise. So heart-wrenching from, right off the bat, the very first
Mhm.
iteration of Tomie. And I enjoy so much your idea of being like obviously physically dismembered, but also emotionally dismembered from the very beginning. Can only take a person so far, and can only do so much to your emotionality and how you view humanity and who you're supposed to be. I think that is such a beautifully tragic concept that seemed, you're right, absolutely clear throughout every single version of her. And you're right, yes, absolutely. It's like one of those things that one of my best friends, Natalie, she
Mhm.
taught me this when she went to therapy. And I always keep it in my pocket because I think it's such a brilliant idea. It's like this idea, right? That, like, say you're about to make breakfast and you're about to crack an egg, but accidentally you drop the egg in it and it falls on the floor and it cracks all over the floor, right? And maybe that happened because you yawned and you closed your eyes and the egg fell on the floor. Maybe you got scared because you saw like an ant crawl across and you got freaked out, so you dropped it, right? Or maybe you sneezed and you dropped the egg and it cracked on the floor. It's like, okay, there could be so many reasons, so many terrible reasons for something to happen, but yet you still crack the egg, right? Like at the end of the day, you still cracked the egg, and that really, really sucks, right? But like you can also
Yeah.
understand why egg was cracked and how that happened and all of this stuff. But like you said, right, she can still do very monstrous things to a lot of people. But it really does change your perspective when you learn why. And how just terrible, for lack of a better word, right? Just terrible people can be.
Yeah.
It's such a beautiful metaphor.
Mhm.
Heartbreaking, but beautiful,
Agreed.
you know?
Yep.
And as you said, I first of all, I love that it is a female main character. I think that's badass.
Yeah.
I think there is so much power and strength in that. That there, because I think, and I'm sure you can agree, Ree, that like it's so. I think a lot of us as females, female presenting, um, love to have that reclamation of the monster, right? Because we see her as badass and as a person that maybe we have always wanted to be but couldn't be, didn't have the ability to be. And I think she definitely has been that for so many people. Like Tomie has been beloved by a lot of fans,
Mhm.
cosplayed by a lot of fans, right? Like really, really just loved
Yeah.
on so many facets. And I don't know. I mean, I just think it's really cool, like her creation. Oh, and can you remind me too, for people that maybe haven't seen her before, what does
Yeah.
she look like? Um,
She is a woman with um dark hair and um it's just it's hard to describe honestly if you don't see the image. Look it up. Definitely just Google
yes,
Tomie
yeah,
Junji Ito if you haven't seen her. But she's a woman with dark hair. The most distinctive feature she has is this mole under her eye.
yeah.
Um, and that is kind of the signature that you know it's her and not just some other beautiful woman.
Right. Exactly.
So yeah,
Yeah, that's how she presents. It's like a human
yep,
being.
she looks like a woman
Yeah.
until she's cut up, and then she the process of her regenerating is interesting.
Yeah.
There's
Tell me
one
more.
story, one of the earlier ones, where she's killed and she's found to be a blood type match for a woman in a hospital, and they transplant one of Tomie's kidneys into her, and the kidney starts to grow into a new Tomie inside of her, and they have to extract, and it's like a head that's like grown out of the kidney, so it's like a kidney, and then there's like little arms and legs and like a Tomie head. um
Oh
there's
my
one
gosh.
story where a woman, as one of the Tomies, is killed, and she starts to regrow a new one out of like her chest where the wound was, and the guy walks upon her, and she's like, please cut me out of like this horrible woman, like cut me out.
Yeah.
And so it's this guy just has the head, and she, as the head, Tomie is like, I'm bored, put me on a soft cushion, I don't want to be like, take me out, I'm bored, get me jewelry. And he's like, you don't have a neck. And she's like,
I
I
don't
don't
care.
care.
You think I care? I'm a
And then
head.
eventually the head like grows a body, but basically whatever happens, like she regrows, and it's, while the finished product is beautiful, the process is definitely not. The process of just this like, I don't know, alien like fleshy blob like that grows the head of a beautiful woman, and then eventually the rest of it turns into
Yeah, a full body.
yeah, it's definitely a little gruesome. And the other fun thing is that you can't, uh her true nature is revealed in photographs. So when
Oh.
you take a picture of her, it almost looks like there's like a double head coming out of her head in all of the pictures. And
Yeah.
one of the earlier iterations, it centers around a woman who's a photographer and takes all these pictures of her, and sees this. And then a later iteration, there's an artist who tries to paint her, who is kind of like driven mad by this as well. And, you know, she's like mocking him, like, you can't capture my beauty, there's no way, my eternal beauty can never be captured on a canvas.
Correct.
um
And you're right.
yeah, yeah, she was right.
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah, so it's as dark as it is, there are definitely like some moments where I still like find myself laughing, like the part where
Yeah.
she's just ahead and he's like carrying her in a bag, and she's like, I want to go to a fancy restaurant and I want jewelry.
He's like, "What?" Okay. Like, that's iconic.
Yeah,
That's absolutely iconic.
it's great.
She's so
Yeah.
awesome.
Hmm. I
Like,
love it.
she really is. Oh my gosh. And like, I again, I think you captured it brilliantly, this idea that Junji also has such a way with words and a way with levity, right? Because it can't just be, like 100% darkness and brutality like the whole time. Because that's not what life is, right? Like,
Yeah.
there's also these moments of levity, and as you said, even friendship and relationships, and the sun comes out the next day and things of that nature, right? Like,
Hmm.
she becomes a person again, or
Hmm.
multiple. And I think that's really telling, of as you said, the metaphor at the beginning, even when chopped into a million pieces, that regrowth and rebecoming and continuation of the story of life of you is so profound. It just brilliant. Like, it's such a beautiful, beautiful way of looking at something so dark that has happened to you,
Hmm.
or in her case, many times,
Many times.
right? Oh.
Yeah.
You also mentioned too, Ree, that there is this sense of obsession and possession, right?
Hmm.
With specifically with Tomie, almost like I think we've, like cross culturally. You talked earlier about like Roman mythology, right, or other forms of myth. There have been
Hmm.
so many forms of this idea of a woman, right, that lures men more
Circe,
often than not.
the
Yes,
sirens.
yes,
It's so
harpies. Right? Like you can think of so many different individuals, and I think that is such a wonderful trope here. But why do you think that that is such a powerful way to explore the ideas of whether it's masculinity, right, toxic masculinity, femininity and feminism, right, and also sexuality, you know what I mean? Why do you think it's such a popular, I guess, trope or motif in
yeah.
stories?
I think it's because most people, I think it's because most people have experienced it in some way or another.
Yeah.
For one thing, I think it's really hard to exist as a woman in the world and avoid like and at least one encounter where someone feels like they, usually a man, feels like they ought to possess you for
Mm-hmm.
some reason or another. It's extremely common, and the institutions in place in our society only reinforce how common it is.
Mm-hmm.
Um, a lot of the ideas that we have about romance, what is romantic,
Yeah.
is are based in, frankly, some unhealthy concepts of ownership over another human, and um, entitlement.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of these things are spun as actually being romantic. So I think that, yeah, I think it's something that a lot of women have experienced. It's definitely something I've experienced um, more than once, and so I think there's an aspect of that speaks to me. And I guess I don't know what it makes me think of is probably an experience that a lot of women have had, where you
Yeah.
have a friend who's a guy and you think you're friends, and then you find out that they don't want to be friends. They want something else. And in fact, if you don't give that something else to them, then your friendship isn't enough. It's not anything. And
Yeah.
that's something that I've been told is I've blatantly been told that that's not enough by someone I thought was my friend. So like, and that's just an extreme example, but I think this is something that a lot of us have experienced. And a lot of men, whether they participate in this or see others participated in it or are pressured to participate in it, even if they don't, that's something they have to face, the pressure to participate in that culture. So
Mm-hmm.
I think it's something that we're all familiar with on a pretty, again, visceral level. And I think that it comes up in stories. I think it comes up so frequently in myth because the concept is old.
Hmm.
It's and you see as these myths evolve over time and as people take new spins on them and interpretations on them, it kind of reflects, I guess, our own cultural self-awareness of
Mm.
these tropes and of how they came to be. Because, if you look at a siren and what it symbolized to ancient Greeks,
Yeah.
versus all the layers of symbolism now, and the ways that um, women have kind of, in some ways, like reclaimed the concept, uh, it's become so much more than that.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
so I think it's just it's a very old concept that has been rehashed and retold and evolves as we do and as our understanding of ourselves do.
Well, first of all, I'm so sorry, right, about those things that have happened to you.
It's like that.
I can relate to
Yeah.
you on so many different levels, and like you mentioned, I'm sure, unfortunately, if we put any woman in the room that they've experienced um, sexual assault, sexual abuse, having that unfair relationship, not knowing who to trust,
Hmm.
even though you just want to be a person.
Yep.
Um, I feel like there's also and I don't know if you've experienced this, Ree, but like there's also this weird, I forget what you call it. Basically, like if you're an online presence, right? There's also people who think you're their best friend,
Oh
or
yes.
you know what I'm talking
Oh,
about.
I do, and I'm blanking on the concept, and it's gonna kill me. Um, parasocial
Parasocial,
relationship.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. And that happens to so many women all of the
Yes.
time when they just want to exist and be. And I mean, there's just, like you said, there's just so many iterations of men, majority men, trying to have you, trying to possess you in some way. And if they don't, it's your fault. And that could mean a plethora of things. That can mean you deserve to die. You deserve no friendship. You deserve not to have any friends. You deserve all of these terrible things. And it really, for lack of a better word, fucks you up from a very young age.
It
Like you said,
absolutely.
right? In so many popular movies, TV shows, books of this very, very distorted view of romanticism and romantics. Like, the first thing I think of, even though I gotta admit, like I was a Twilight kid, I loved
Oh
Twilight.
yeah.
Right, like that's like you
Same.
are way into middle school and high school. Like you know, Twilight was everything. And I remember looking back on it a little later in life, right? And I was like, oh,
He's a
some of these
stalker.
things, this is not okay. Like why did we why right, like why was this okay? And unfortunately, I think with so many pieces of pop culture that perpetuated it and made it very popular, it really messes with your brain chemistry, and you think like that's how I'm supposed to be and I should be okay with all of these things. Or if a man gets mad at me because I don't want to date him or even be his friend, right, like it's my fault. All of this is always my fault, my fault, my fault, my fault. And it's so funny how you said, right, there's been so many different versions of this quote unquote monstrous woman throughout generations, throughout decades, right, throughout centuries of storytelling. And yet, while the women are like continuously like, yes, exactly, the men are like, I don't know what the hell you're talking about. And it's just fucking ridiculous. It's
And
just ridiculous.
it's something you said. I think it's part of the reason why Tomie ends up being such an appealing character to a
Mm-hmm.
lot of women, even though we know she's evil, we know she's a villain,
Sure.
is what you said. We are so used to saying it's my fault, it's my fault, it's my fault, and Tomie, it's never Tomie's fault.
Ever.
It never. She is, to the other extreme of like this is also not a good thing, but with her,
Yeah.
it's like it she never takes it as her fault. It's always someone else's fault. So I think that there is maybe, I don't know, some like a little bit of like a vicarious thrill in that as a woman reading it, to be able to not internalize what's happened to you as your fault, and to be able to like, no, everyone else is the problem.
Clearly, right? Like clearly obvious. And that's what's so funny too. I think in the way you told us the story and how there's so
Yeah.
many different versions is, I think to the reader it's like pretty damn obvious that like, oh my god, like this is freaking horrible, like what's happening to you over and over and over again. But everyone is oblivious, or no, even worse, knows about it and decides to, doesn't matter. Like her livelihood and her personhood, it does not matter. It is her fault all the way. Um, and you're right, unfortunately, so many women relate to that and want so badly, I think, to regrow and rebirth and keep going. And that can be really hard when a person takes a piece of you with them, constantly, all the time, often in very traumatic, brutal ways that you can't really
Mhm.
get back. Um, like personally, I would love, truthfully, I would love to have a part of me get stronger and meaner, almost, right? Like every time something like that happens, like I kind of want to be jaded. I kind of want to be, you know, totally into myself and
Yeah.
forever fighting for myself and advocating for myself. And I think it's funny how she can kind of teach us to do that,
Yeah.
in everyday life.
Yeah.
What a cool person. Like, what a cool person, right? Like that. It's just such a cool story that I think a lot of, and I know it's intense. Yes, it's very brutal and very graphic, absolutely. But should all women read it? Yes. Yes. All men should read too, but let's be honest. It's for girls. That's who it's for.
Thanks, Junji.
I know. Literally, God,
Solid.
just incredible. Incredible work. Well, Reem, why do you think in all of your walks of life, right, whether, I don't know, it's in cosplay work or story creation or artistry or just being a human, why do you think Tomie has stuck with you for so long? Whether that's her as a person, whether that's the story, Junji's work, like why do you think she's so prominent in your life?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think as one of Junji Ito, I think Junji Ito is prominent in my life. My love of horror, like he was definitely at the beginning of it. It was one of the strong influences that kind of crafted my love of horror. And then Tomie as a character, I think she's just, I mean, she's kind of just iconic for all the reasons that we talked about. And I think there was despite this is a villain, but there was a part of me that has deeply related to that like feeling of, I don't know, am I cursed that people will, I can't just like, it's the choice of, is it a choice between being hated or being loved to the point of obsession until it wraps back around to hate? Like,
Mm-hmm.
can I just be a person and have friends and be loved and accepted for who I am? I think that's like, that's a, I don't know, it resonated with me on that level, and it stuck with me, I think, because of that.
That's so wonderful. I feel like more stories should be created that way, because they become an
Part of us.
extension. Yeah, an extension of you.
Mhm.
It's part of us. It's something that it's the courage we need that day. It's the bravery we need to continue, especially when it gets so dark in your head and the world gets so dark and things just get so complicated. It's so nice to have an author, a creator, an artist like Junji,
Yeah.
right? Right for the people that really need it, right for the people that like can't express what they're feeling,
Mhm.
in words and pictures and images and manga and anime, right? Like, and Junji does it so well, like, so as you said, viscerally well. Like,
Yeah.
it's so bananas, um, how well he does it, truthfully.
Agreed. Very much agreed.
What would you say to people that they're going to pick up Tomie for the first time, right? Maybe they haven't really explored Junji before,
Mhm.
right? What advice? How would you tell them to approach the story? What would you tell them? Do you think?
I would say keep an open mind.
Yeah.
Be excited because it's great. And keep an eye out for the evolution of Junji Ito's art throughout it. That's like one of the really cool elements of reading it, because it was written over such a span of time that you really see him improve. And I think for a lot of women, it might not be obvious at first, but you might find something there that is impactful.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Definitely. Definitely.
Yes.
Well, you've mentioned this a couple of different times throughout, but now I'm really curious to ask you on the spot.
Yeah.
Do you think that Rhea is a monster? Did I say Rhea?
Yeah.
See, it's happening. What did I just say, right? I was
It's
like, oh
okay.
my god, they're mixing together. It's your cosplay. It's
The
your
cosplay
cosplay. That's
worked.
what it is.
I'm floored. So Tonya, she, I would say by the end of the story, yes. I don't know if she is a monster to start, though. I'd say to start, I don't think she was, but I think she became a monster.
Yes, explain. I know you have
Um,
very well, but
yeah, because she, there's part of it is when you're treated like a monster over and over and over and over, it's only a matter of time before you become one. Um, and we are shaped by people's expectations of us in so many ways. And not everyone, what you've been through is not an excuse for terrible things that you do. But it is unfortunately very common for people to endure something unimaginable and then go on to perpetrate that very thing or worse. And I think, unfortunately, with Tomie, that was how she ended up being impacted. And I think there's maybe a little bit of a supernatural element as well. Like in her case, I do think that there's clearly because she becomes less and less like a person as the story goes on. I feel that in the original first iteration, she is pretty, as I said, pretty normal. A little obnoxious, but like not in any way that she wouldn't just grow out of.
right. Many of us have experienced before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then as it goes, she even the fact that she has a female friend in the first one, that is distinctive because that is not the case later on. Like she doesn't have friends later on as she goes. She is pretty much only a manipulator in the later stories. So I think whether that's like a piece of her soul or whatever it is being cut up with every time that she's chopped into pieces, it's by the end there's not much left there. There's not really any empathy. There's not much but the primal desire to survive and to be the last one standing, even when the others are also other versions of her.
Yeah.
Because there's one of the later ones where it's a guy basically injects her blood into several children.
Oh my gosh.
And then the children, as they grow up, grow into Tomies. And so the reason that the messed up reason that this guy does this in the first place is because he is one of the people who killed Tomie once upon a time due to his own obsession with her. And she like ruined him from his perspective. And he wants revenge on her. And when he had her previously, every time he tried to cut her up and mutilate her, like to basically make her ugly, because that was like she was so vain, he wanted to take that away from her, and she would just keep healing, regrowing, and then eventually split. He has this idea: if I inject people with her, then they grow up from children, maybe she will get old, and in old age she will wither.
Oh my
And
gosh.
finally basically have to face the deterioration of her beauty, which is like the one thing she has. So yeah, it's pretty messed up. I think there's also definitely like a message here about, I mean, we see this a lot in horror too, like I think of like the substance as far as like newer horror goes, just the horror of beauty standards that women face, and the horror of that we are taught to feel towards our own bodies aging in like a very natural way.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's also a significant theme in these stories.
Yeah.
But yeah, the children, they start to grow into her. There's a neighborhood in there, like 3 different little Tomies, and they're, by the time they're like 12, they are like recruiting other boys in the neighborhood to go and kill the other one
Holy
so that they can
moly.
be the only one. So
Jeez.
pretty monstrous by the end, but
But like
also
you said, at the hands of somebody else.
who injected the children.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And it makes you think.
Yeah.
Oh
Yep.
my gosh. Well, I love your choice of like how it changes, right? Like monstrosity or being deemed monstrous is not necessarily a black and white definition. It also doesn't, it's not stagnant, right? It
Yeah.
doesn't stay the same. It can change.
Mm-hmm.
And again, talking back to your definition at the beginning of the episode, right? It, it it depends on privilege, it depends on empathy, it depends on so many other aspects of context. And Tomie is such a brilliant representation of the fluidity, I think, of monstrosity, um, physically and metaphorically and mentally, right? And also kind of how human beings are and can be. Um, you're not one note. You're never going to be one note. There's a lot of bits and pieces of you.
Yeah.
And I think she's a brilliant personification, monstrification, I don't know, of of that.
Yeah.
And again, a reflection of society, a reflection of what other people can be monstrous to. Perhaps
Yeah.
more, often more,
Yeah.
more so than her. Yeah, yeah. Well, why do you think that it is so important to continue to explore monsters, to read about monsters, to watch movies, to listen to music about monsters, right? Like why are monsters um I don't know, so integral for people, do you think, Ree?
I think that they're an easier way to look at our own fears about,
Mm,
usually about humanity, or about things, in some cases things that are greater than humanity and are greater than people in general, and it's easier to face that when you can give it a form, and you can represent it with something, because sometimes the things that we fear are so much bigger than that they are overwhelming. I think stories of monsters allow us to look at those things in new ways, and I think we have a natural drive as people to personify things. Like, I know there's that phenomena where if you stare at something long enough, like, you are likely to find a face in it. It's like one of the things that are we're just primed to find is the resemblance to human faces. It's so
yeah,
deeply ingrained. I think we
yeah,
have a tendency to personify things. So I think that it's kind of a natural route to take to personify our fears um,
yeah.
into monsters. And sometimes those are concepts, and sometimes they're reflections of what we fear about ourselves or what we fear about people around us.
It's almost like what do they call it? Like shadow work
Yeah.
in therapy. It's like
Yeah.
I get to kind of take this person out and look at them and view them and see them and how they do life and how they can process emotion and things.
Hmm.
And it's very helpful. It's very
Yeah.
helpful to learn, I think, through monsters. And it can be scary, like you said. Especially because they're often the bad guy, right? So a lot of the times you're trying to reconcile with like, what am I? Is this my fault? Or is this society's fault? But it's easier to digest really hard things and learn
Hmm.
really difficult things through the lens of monstrosity, for sure.
Yeah.
I think you said it perfectly. Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, final question.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we are here at the end, but literally, and I'm putting this on the camera, Ree, if you ever want to come back and talk more Junji, please.
I would love to.
We would love to have you, but like, holy crap,
Thank you.
my mind is spinning with so many thoughts and ideas and questions.
Well, I could talk about this for ages, so please.
Literally, which is good. Okay, it's a Saturday, say you're chilling, you're relaxing, doing
Yeah.
your thing. Maybe you're even streaming. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe, I don't know. But all of a sudden, Tomie appears in front of you. What would you do in that situation? What would you say? Would you do anything in that situation?
I think I'd make her some tea.
Yeah. Yes.
Sit down for a chat, and I wouldn't let it get to me when she insults me, because that's just, that's whatever. I'll just, don't try to kill me, and we'll be fine.
Yeah. But you're giving her the space
Yeah.
to be. Like, just exist, not asking anything from her, not wanting anything from her, just be. You know? What tea would you make for her?
Probably something expensive, because she is really a brat. So
Very high maintenance.
Yeah. Anytime she asks for food, it's like, I want caviar.
Tomie. Please.
So yeah. Probably like, I don't know, some like fancy puer or like something like that.
Yeah, that's perfect for her. And I feel like there may be you might have to blow on it for her and stir it and make sure it's perfect temperatures and things, but but iconic. It would be the start of probably a very beautiful friendship.
I would certainly try.
Yeah, definitely. Well, Ree, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you for having me.
You're such a joy, and I love your wealth of knowledge, right? With Junji and just the world of horror and escapism in general. It was such a pleasure. And please keep us updated on all the things that you're doing and all of the new TTRPGs that you're being a part of, and all the new stories that you read. Like, just keep us in the loop, because you definitely have a great brain for it.
Thank you so much. I would absolutely love that. I'd love to. It was so wonderful to talk to you, and just your passion for all this stuff is so, like, it shines through so bright, and it's so much fun to be able to share in that. So thank you for having me, and look forward to the next conversation.
Oh yeah, it'll happen.
It'll
happen, definitely.
This episode of Floaties for Krakens was written and recorded by me, Camille Maria Acosta. A monstrous thank you to Ree for such a powerful interview. A big thank you to Michael Kosman for producing a stellar episode, and a huge thank you to Natalie Hedberg for designing such a phenomenal logo. And music for the show was also written and produced by me, with a special appearance by my tata, Toby Acosta. Thank you all so much for tuning in to today's show. It truly means everything. If you have questions or curiosities about the research or media referenced in today's episode, everything will hopefully be in the description box. And you can find us on our website and our socials, links in the description as well. Anyway, thanks again for being here, everyone. And just a reminder, it's okay to be afraid of the monster, but it's also okay to love the heck out of it too. Keep being monstrous and keep shining bright.